One of the most interesting training camp battles has to be at wide receiver. Never have the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch had this much talent, where there's a lot of unknowns about who these guys are going to actually win this job, or if they're going to even reach the expectations that people have for them. A mixture of young players and veterans competing for the sixth wide receiver spot. It's going to be a lot of fun with the training camp battles. Looking forward to talking about it, all that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Glad you could join for another training camp battle conversation because the 49ers 53-man roster is probably going to be the best in the NFL, or at least amongst the top five in the NFL, not just with starters, but with depth. And of course, being so close to the situation, we've seen these players from the time they were drafted or the time that they were added to this roster and what ultimately they could mean for this 49ers football team. And of course, you need to make sure you have a plethora of type of players. And the 49ers have a unique skill set for every single one of their top five guys. But then, according to Matt Miyoko, he believes the 49ers are going to keep six. And of course, if you've been on the channel for a while, that's what I've been saying. I expect the 49ers to keep six wide receivers. There's just too much talent at the position. Whether it's a player that they drafted, they're not quite ready to give up on, or a key veteran that they've brought in that could help the 49ers on special teams or with key catches at times when maybe they have an injury or they need a break for one of their key players, or just guys that can block really well. You have to have a specific skill set to be able to make the 49ers. But also, what sets you apart from the other guys on the roster? What is your skill set that's going to make you unique enough for Kyle Shanahan to want to use your skill set within the offense? Now, if you do something different, that gives him the opportunity to build something into the offense that you can do. So if you could stretch the team vertically, well, then now you've added an extra element to this 49ers team. Or maybe you're really good at catching the ball and getting yards after the catch. You fit in nicely with the players that you have in front of you, so you can just get in there and start doing some things. Or maybe you're really good with the ball in your hands from the backfield. Now you can add that. Or maybe you're a good route runner. Or maybe you have tremendous hands. You catch the ball when you're in tight spaces. You're really good at sideline catches. There's all these different elements to these players that could give them a unique way to make an impact on this team. Or in some cases, you're just a steady backup that can go in there in case Ayuk or Debo or somebody else needs a break, and you could step in and take that role over. So that's what the 49ers are trying to do, is build a 53-man roster, and a lot of things go into it. It's not just who are the six best wide receivers, because there's other elements that are in play. When you are at the back end of a receiver room, you're expected to play special teams. You're expected to contribute on special teams. So you have to go out there and make something happen. And if you're not going to add anything in special teams, your likelihood of making this roster is not good, unless you're just so good at playing wide receiver that they just can't ignore your skill set. But we're talking about wide receiver 6, which means you have to have the ability to do a few things. So we're going to get into this conversation, talking about the ins and outs. And of course, this topic has been talked about a little bit. But we're going to go into great detail and really go over these players. As always, in the comment section down below, leave who you believe is going to be wide receiver 6 and why. And as I'm going through, you guys can comment on what you think about what I'm saying about each player at the position. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. 49ers Cutback on Believe. Please give it a 5-star rating. If you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. So, the wide receiver room has been constructed a few different ways, and there's been seasons where the 49ers have been wondering who is going to be at the back end of the roster. There has been hopes for some, and there's also been, these opportunities where players come up and step up out of nowhere. We've been looking for guys that can do specific roles within Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I think we have a clear picture of who the top guys are. Of course, Brandon Ayuk, he's not in a battle with anyone. There's no one that can challenge Brandon Ayuk for his ex-receiver spot with the San Francisco 49ers right now. He's in a league all his own when it comes to the 49ers wide receiver room. Same with Deebo Samuel. No one's coming in and taking the Z role from him. He's going to handle it. He's going to do his thing, and he's going to add the dynamic ability and playmaker ability to catch the ball and take it to the house. Jauan Jennings is still going to be wide receiver 3. The new 2-year extension cemented that a role for Jauan Jennings, a key first down guy on third, a guy that makes pivotal catches, can get you some yards after the catch, but also can block his butt off and give you some extra options there. Not just blocking as a stock blocker on the outside, but also going ahead and coming in and blocking defensive tackles with wham blocks. That's something you don't see from wide receivers around the league, but Jauan Jennings gives you that ability. And if you watch my video about personnel groupings, because of Jauan Jennings, because of Deebo Samuel and their versatility, the 49ers could run more different personnel groupings than they ever possibly could and get some really unique looks, spreading defenses out if that's the best way to go. And in some cases, maybe it's not. But go check out that video. I think it will really be a fun one for you. Now, Ricky Pearsall is going to be wide receiver 4, an elite route runner, a guy with a great wingspan that makes contested catches and takes big hits and keeps going. So I don't think there's any competition for wide receiver 4. I can't see one of the guys we're going to talk about coming in and taking Ricky Pearsall's reps or his opportunity, especially him being a first-round pick. I think more so the question is, where does Ricky Pearsall fit as far as position? Now, we know that they're going to work him in all 3 positions, so he's going to get his opportunity to play those. He's going to play, X. He's going to play Z. He's going to play slot. There's going to be opportunities for him to get some different looks. Questions from others have been, can he play X? And that's what we're going to find out. Training camp is going to be a good experience. Why? And why does that matter what Ricky Pearsall plays? Well, if Ricky Pearsall's not being as successful playing the X receiver spot, that could open the door for one of these other guys we're going to talk about to play X. Because one of the ways you make this team is by being a steady backup to Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or Jauan Jennings. And to do that, you have to have a similar skill set or at least be able to get the job done. And so if you have a case with Brandon Ayuk where you need to get him a couple breaks, and last year he didn't take too many plays off, if Ricky Pearsall's not capable of playing X because Jauan Jennings isn't your prototypical X receiver and neither is Deebo, then one of these other guys are going to have a shot. So that's why it's important to see what Ricky Pearsall's capable of doing. The best case scenario for the 49ers is for Ricky Pearsall to be able to play all 3 positions. If that's the case, it means whenever you need a break for Ayuk or Deebo or Jauan, you just call for Ricky and Ricky goes in and he handles business. Now, his route running is elite, and so he should be able to run all. But the questions are going to be speed, getting in and out of his breaks on these different routes for the X receiver. It's going to be interesting. There's lots of people that don't think that he can get on top of a cornerback and then stack his route to be able to get open vertically down the field. And that could prevent him from being an X receiver in the NFL. So we'll see if he's able to play that position. And it could make for some interesting conversation as training camp in the preseason goes about what Ricky ends up doing. Then Jacob Cowing. And I think Jacob Cowing is a lock more so because he's a 4th round pick. I think if he would have been a 5th or a 6th round pick, we wouldn't be talking about Cowing the same way. And I know a lot of people are talking about him being elite. I've heard some kind of say that he reminds him of Tank Dell. I think that that's a stretch because Tank Dell was a phenomenal player coming out of college. He was really, really good about creating separation. I do think Jacob Cowing's a good player. I like his speed. I like his skill set. I like the way he gets in and out of breaks, changes directions, good routes. I think there's things you can do with him with screens, reverses, especially early in the career. Maybe he only gets a couple catches here and there. I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, but I think he's going to show enough in training camp that the 49ers are going to be like, you know what? We need him on the football team. And of course, he's got special team ability as well. And when you have return ability, you're going to get a shot. And according to what we've heard about rookie minicamp and minicamp from the media members that were there, Jacob Cowing was struggling to receive punts early. Now, it's a little bit different. The spin on the football that some of the punters in the NFL put is a little bit more unique compared to what you get in college. It's just the way it goes. As you start dealing with professionals, you start dealing with the top at their position. For punters, the top 32 guys in the league, and they're going to kick it a bunch of variety of different ways. The ball's going to go end over end. The ball's not always going to have a spiral. And so you're going to have to locate it. You're going to have to find out how the wind plays games with that football. And so Jacob Cowing's got some adjustments to do there. Now, Pearsall has proven apparently that he can catch those balls consistently. And we did it in college, but they're saying he wasn't having really any problems there. So it just cements Pearsall's ability to help this football team in 2024. But Cowing, it's a little bit more open. And I think Cowing is going to be competing for a roster spot, but I think he's sitting in a pretty position to be able to make it. I don't think they want to give up on him yet. So let's talk about the eligible players for wide receiver 6, and we'll kind of go through the players that are going to be in a competition for. There's several guys that are battling, and I want to go over their strengths, their weaknesses, and then what they could potentially add in special teams, which I think could play a huge determining factor. Once we go through who these players are, then I'll start going through the battles and who they actually are between and what possibly could happen in training camp to tip it in one way or the other. So let's talk about Danny Gray, former 3rd round pick a couple of years ago. And a lot of people believe that he is the pairing for what you were going to get out of the young quarterback in Trey Lance. So you got Danny Gray to be able to take the top off the defense and catch the ball vertically. And I think when you see the speed on film, it definitely illustrates that he can go vertical. And that's a skill set he definitely has. But if you go watch his SMU film, and then, of course, what I saw at training camp last year, Danny Gray can do more than just a vertical threat. Now, the same way I believe Jacob Cowing is more than just a vertical threat, I definitely believe Danny Gray is. Danny Gray showed the ability to catch a dig over the middle of the field, and if he had space, take it to the house. He could catch a slant and take it to the house. He could run a deep fade, a slot fade, and take it to the house. There's home run ability with Danny Gray. That elite speed is one of the main strengths that he has. And also yak. And when you're going to get yards after the catch, you fit in with the 49ers roster and current build of playmakers. Every single one of them, for the most part, that have a significant role in this offense, catch the ball and get yards after the catch. The one thing that Ronnie Bell has that's different from a lot of the other wide receivers and different than the other playmakers is hole shot ability. He can take it to the house anytime he has a little bit of space. Debo can do that. George Kittle can do that. But Ayuk hasn't really proven to have that home run dynamic ability. Catches the ball, gets good explosive plays, but usually doesn't get hole shot touchdowns. That's not really what his game is. He's a great route runner, which I think is very in tune with what Ricky Pearsall is. Good route runner, catch the ball. I don't know how many home run shots we're going to see out of Ricky. I hope we get him, but I just don't know. Where Gray, we know we can get that. Now, we haven't seen it. His rookie year, very sparingly on the field, had like one touch, one catch, wasn't very significant. He was definitely redshirting year one at from SMU to San Francisco. Not surprising. Now, go to 2023 training camp. I'm in attendance and I'm watching Danny Gray day in and day out be very successful. Just be a consistent veteran who had opportunities downfield, made the best of most of them, had some key catches down the field, but also had some cool catches underneath that he was able to get extra yardage out of and looked like a very competent wide receiver. And when it comes to Gray, that elite speed always gives him an advantage against other cornerbacks, but he just couldn't get on the field because he got injured in the second preseason game. And he injures his shoulder, injures his AC joint. He's out for a significant amount of time. So the 49ers carry him on the 53, put him on IR, and then they don't bring him back. And so a lot of people have definitely given up on Danny Gray. What I saw in training camp did not make me want to give up on Danny Gray at all. If Gray would have had a bad training camp, I would be right along with everyone that I would be ready to move on. But what I saw was a consistent player. And then all of a sudden, you talk to his position coach, and Hankins says that Danny Gray came into offseason workouts as more professional, more consistent, working out every day, doing better. That doesn't exactly make me want to write off Danny Gray. So Gray has that potential. His biggest weakness has got to be the injury bug, which has been a problem for him. And then we'll talk about, the abilities that he has on special teams. He was a really good gunner in his rookie season. That's where he made an impact. That speed is different when it comes to playing gunner in the NFL. Your ability to get off a press, get down the field, and be able to put pressure on a punt returner is huge for the 49ers. Danny Gray is very successful there. That's an advantage. And also, if the 49ers go back to using him as a returner, I don't know if they will. He was going to be in prime position to be the 49ers kick returner last season before he suffered the shoulder injury. I'm guessing he'll get another look, but we'll see. The new kickoff rules could make it a little bit more difficult for Gray, but he's got the speed. If you wanted home run guys back there, Cowing, Danny Gray, Isaac Rendo, all 4-3 guys, they could definitely take it to the house. Let's talk about Ronnie Bell. Last year, Ronnie Bell was a 7th-round pick out of Michigan. Very much a fan favorite. Lots of people really enjoyed Ronnie Bell. And I think his main strength that I saw was his competitiveness. The guy battles. He works his butt off every single day, does whatever he can to help the football team. And I think that's important. So you had Danny Gray. His elite characteristic is speed. With Ronnie Bell, it's competitiveness. And I think that's a nice trait to have as a NFL pro. I think his biggest weakness is, even though he's got good size, he's over 6 foot, he's about 190 pounds, he plays a lot smaller than that. And so I think it shows up sometimes when you see his size and the way he blocks, it's not always as good. So, I mean, Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell, doesn't matter who it is, you better be able to block. And I think that's one thing that's definitely not been great for Ronnie Bell. I also have seen him consistently since Michigan and then last year for the 49ers. He will somewhat run through zones. He doesn't always sit down where he's supposed to, and that will convolute different route concepts and make it a little bit more difficult for Brock Purdy. So sometimes you don't have the spacing that you want with Ronnie Bell on the field. He did have catches. He did have production. Got to give him credit for that, but that's one weakness that I saw. And then also his hands. How many footballs went off his hands in the preseason and the regular season that bounced up in the air in the middle of the field? It wasn't for lady luck and that ball hitting the ground. There were more opportunities for turnovers because of Ronnie Bell's hands over the middle. I thought that was a real concern for me. The other concern is the fact that he just did not show up when it came to 49er special teams. A lot of people thought he was going to be very sufficient as the punt returner. 49ers put him out there, and it was an absolute adventure, and not in a positive way. So maybe he got better. I always like to give guys the opportunity to get better between season, and maybe he'll get better at punt return. I think he really has to, because he has to make a name for himself on special teams to be able to beat out the guys around him. What sets him apart? What is that skill set? Now, the 49ers definitely tried to play him at X last year in place of Brandon Ayuk. I think it had limited success, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with Bell, but he's a competitor. He's going to work his butt off, and he's going to achieve whatever he possibly can. He's going to give his best effort. I think that's always important when you're looking at a player, and a young player especially. Chris Conley, and Conley was really great for the 49ers down the stretch last year, into the regular season, playoff, Super Bowl. He played a tremendous impact, including having a key catch against the Green Bay Packers along the sidelines when the 49ers were driving for their winning touchdown drive. His blocking is superb, having the size that he has. No longer as fast as he used to be. He used to have the size and speed combination that was scary in the NFL, but the speed is falling off a little bit. It's still fast enough, though. And one of his advantages is definitely experience. So blocking and experience. He just knows where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there, when he's supposed to sit down. He's very good at handling the norms. You just know what you're going to get from him. He's like, you put him out there, you're going to get the exact same repetition that you're supposed to get. Then when you look at his special teams, he's a gunner, and he was absolutely fantastic in the Super Bowl. Danny Gray was great in his rookie season, and Chris Conley was fantastic in the Super Bowl. I think both those guys have special teams upside that can help this football team. And when you're talking about a guy going to be a position player at, the last guy on the roster, special teams could be the avenue to make it. And when it comes to Conley and Gray, they've set themselves apart at the gunner position as far as getting down there and making plays. So what could separate them? Well, if Danny Gray could step forward as far as a return guy as well, then you add to the mix. Like, well, Brian Schneider goes and he says, hey, where do you got Conley? Where do you got Gray? And he goes, because Gray is going to be a starting gunner and the return guy. And they go, okay, well, what's Conley going to be? Going to be a gunner. And it's like, well, which one would you rather have? Well, I'd rather have the guy that does two. So those are the type of things that could play into it. Of course, Conley might be better than Gray at gunner at when they get out there. It's going to be interesting, but that blocking and experience, and we know Kyle Shanahan values that role, and he could definitely handle it. Trent Taylor comes in back to the 49ers. He's been in the league for 7 years now, and Taylor brings a bunch of experience, including experience in the 49ers playbook. And I know things change, but the base offense, those type of things are the same. He's going to be a quick study and have this thing down. And we know as a wide receiver, he's got the experience to know when to sit down and where. Him and Jimmy Garoppolo had a great rapport in his rookie season to be able to get the football in these little tight windows and make catches. He was very a la Wes Welker, Danny Amendola type with Jimmy Garoppolo. But after that, it never really worked out. And so Trent Taylor has been around the league a little bit, and now he's back. And one of the things that he has is experience with the 49ers, experience in the league, but also experience as a punt returner. And with Ray McCloud moving on, that's going to be his advantage, including Matt Mayoko came on the show with me and Mark for Red and Bold, and he said that he kind of thought we forgot, and it was me that asked the question, that I forgot to mention Trent Taylor. And the truth is, I have feelings about Trent Taylor. He's going to have to show up as a receiver. And, of course, that's me thinking that Ricky Pearsall or Jacob Cowing or, somebody like that could handle the punt return duties. But do you trust a rookie? And Matt Mayoko is saying he doesn't think they would trust a rookie, that they would probably look to Trent Taylor, and that could be his avenue to make the football team. So special teams is going to play a huge amount in who makes this team as wide receiver 6. Tay Martin, you got to like the height and length. He's a guy that's got that about him. He's been with the 49ers organization for 2 seasons. He knows this offense. And people have had big expectations for Tay Martin. Lots of people thought he was going to make the roster last year, and it just hasn't worked out. And I wonder where he's actually at. He went to rookie minicamp, and that's great. He got to really help the young guys experience what they're supposed to do and got in some extra work himself. But where does he sit now? He's been on the 49ers practice squad. Is there going to be room for him on the practice squad? I wonder if he's getting to the point now where the 49ers continue to add so much talent that he doesn't really have a shot to make the team. And for the 49ers, that's good news because you want to keep getting better. But for Tay Martin, it's not. And I don't think he's been able to ascend to the point where making the football team can happen. And he hasn't showed enough on special teams to tip it in the direction that he wants it to go. I worry about Tay Martin being, in this battle and him actually having an opportunity to make the football team. But height and length is definitely there, and let's see how much he improved. Maybe he'll come out and he'll show out. You never just say no about these guys. You got to let them go out there and compete. And then, of course, Tariq Owens is the 11th wide receiver on the roster, and he's just raw talent. The guy's got a lot of work to do. He came along to football really late, and when he's getting in and out of his breaks on his routes, it's not clean. He doesn't run clean routes right now. There's a lot of work to be done. I will say this, from what I saw in the offseason to what I saw from the video at minicamp, Tariq Owens got a lot better. So, hey, you know what? The young kid's working. He's trying to do his best. You can see him putting in the work in the weight room during the offseason and putting in the footwork. So all those things are great. And I wonder how much of the gap that's between him and Tay Martin and others that he can make up. But the one thing you can't deny is he's got a work ethic, and he's got that his father's blood within him. So we'll see what he can do. I think he's a long shot to make this 49ers roster. But the fact he's raw and hasn't played long, depending on what his learning curve is, could mean he's able to come in and make some plays. And I want to see how he blocks and when we get the pads on, what the physicality looks like when he takes a shot. Watching his college film, I don't think you could always get a clear picture of that from Tariq Owens. Now, one thing we do know is the 49ers will somewhat look at young players and try to keep some young players. Willie Snead kind of alluded to that and said, hey, there was probably guys who didn't earn it. They were getting opportunities, but he felt that he did. And he's a veteran in every sense of the word. And the reason that Willie Snead was key for the 49ers was they could keep younger players on the 53-man roster. And because of Snead's accrued seasons in the league, they didn't have to worry about him getting claimed off waivers. He could just say, hey, yeah, you can cut me. I'll sign back with the practice squad. And they did that. A couple years ago, they did that a lot. They kept signing him back after him being on the active 53-man roster. Well, last year, it got elevated a couple of times, but the opportunities were definitely few and far between, especially with the emergence of Chris Conley, because Conley was doing so much blocking that they preferred him blocking. Willie Snead's a good blocker, but they preferred him blocking, and they preferred him, as far as being a gunner. With Ronnie Bell, you couldn't run the risk of waiving him and him getting claimed by another team, so they never did that. It's part of the reason that Danny Gray never came back. But I think when you're looking at this battle, I think it does come down to a four-man race. I think it's between Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, and Trent Taylor. And one thing that Matt Maiocco brought up that I have somewhat mentioned before is the fact that when you're looking at guys like Conley and Trent Taylor, because they're veterans, the way Willie Snead was, they already have the accrued seasons to not be claimed on waivers. So last year, the 49ers, when they built their original 53, did cut Chris Conley. And I know a lot of people are emotionally attached to Chris Conley, me included. I think he did a very good job for the 49ers down the stretch, and I like the guy. And the fact that he adds to this football team is huge. But I think the 49ers have used their practice squad maybe better than anyone else in the entire league. So getting Chris Conley onto your practice squad is an extension of your football team. So in that case, you're keeping 7 wide receivers. Because if you go ahead and you waive Ronnie Bell, you waive Danny Gray, and we're going to talk about them in a second, they can be claimed on waivers. One other team just has to like them. All you have to do is look last year. Il Manning, gone. Quantrez Knight, gone, right? Guys that people really liked, they got picked up because they could be waived. Chris Conley, Willie Snead, they got cut. They signed the practice squad. We've seen this before with other players as well. So knowing that you have 2 players like that could easily keep them. And if you're going to have young players like Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing, and either Ronnie Bell or Danny Gray on your active roster, having 2 key veterans as backups on the practice squad could be huge. Imagine having Trent Taylor and Chris Conley on your practice squad, and you go out there and you say, you know what, Ricky Pearsall is going to handle punt return duties, and he does a really good job. Well, then Trent Taylor, not as necessary to have. But let's say you're worried about it. Well, then Trent Taylor's available. You can start elevating him and making him active for games. You can figure out what to do with your roster to make, the key moves that you have to make. So 49ers could have a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to Trent Taylor, when it comes to Chris Conley, because of the accrued seasons that they already have in the league. Conley's been in the league for 10 years. Taylor's been in the league for 7. They're not probably going anywhere. These are guys that could come right back to the 49ers if they got cut, which makes the most sense. So Matt Maiocco said he didn't think Chris Conley was in the battle at all. I don't think it's that clear. I think that Conley and Taylor have a chance because if Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell just don't show up, they don't play good, they're not playing well, 49ers might decide just to move on. And in one case, you never know. Maybe a team in the league's looking for another wide receiver. You might have somebody out there that's willing to flip you a draft pick for Danny Gray's elite speed or for Ronnie Bell's competitiveness. Maybe somebody liked him, or still likes him. They've seen what he could do. So I don't think it's out of the question that Conley or Trent Taylor make this, but I think it's the most likely that they end up getting cut and then end up back on the 49ers practice squad than the 2 younger guys. Now, when it comes to that competition with Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell, I think the first thing it's going to come down to is blocking. And Ronnie Bell wasn't a great blocker last year. In fact, he made mistakes. But we haven't really got to see Danny Gray block consistently in game situations. I saw him block at practice. He did fine as a stock blocker. Was it Brandon Ayuk? No. Was it Chris Conley? No. I mean, it's not. I mean, he's not that big. He doesn't play that big. Ayuk plays bigger than his body. But I thought it was sufficient. So that's an advantage for Gray. Now, Ronnie Bell's competitiveness, he gets open. Danny Gray's going to have to match that. I think where it comes and gets interesting is what happens when you get to special teams. If Ronnie Bell could show that he can be the punt returner, Ronnie Bell's got a good chance to make this football team. He can't show that, and that's another thing that he struggles at again, or Ricky Pearsall beats him out. That could hurt his chances of making this team. Because we do know that Danny Gray's got elite speed. Him as a gunner is huge. Him as a guy that can return kicks is huge. Those are just advantages that you're going to have to play out. They have similar size. They have similar experience. I mean, Gray's going to year 3, Ronnie Bell year 2. But these are guys who have been around a little bit. You just have to go with what you see at training camp. It's literally going to come down to who catches the football, who blocks, and who does the things right. Some people think it's going to be Ronnie Bell. Some people think it's going to be Danny Gray. I think if Danny Gray repeats the performance he had at training camp last year, he will make the team as a 6 wide receiver. Part of the reason I believe that is he outshined Ronnie Bell in every sense and every avenue last season. Now, Bell's going to be better in year 2. 100% he will be. He was a rookie last year. He was learning this offense. And in the same way I give everyone a grace, I'm going to give him grace as well. But if Danny Gray comes in and repeats his performance, he's going to beat him out. And really will come down to, can Gray beat out Conley on special teams or beat out Trent Taylor when it comes to returning? I think it's going to be interesting. But as you can hear, I'm one of the few that leans towards Danny Gray, and we'll see what happens. Maybe Danny Gray won't show up and he won't make this football team. And, that wouldn't be surprising because that's just the way this battle is going to go. But I think it's going to come down to the 2 young guys. I think Conley and Trent Taylor will help this football team at some point and will be on the 49ers practice squad. But don't count them out either. 4 guys in the midst for this competition. Let me know who you think is going to win this competition. And I'm sure you've been, hearing about it a lot, but, go through the strengths, go through the weaknesses, go through their special teams help, and then look also at who's most likely to make it to your practice squad. Not Gray, not Bell. So that's where you start deciding between the veterans with the more than 4 accrued seasons and the young guys who don't really have that. So I'm curious who you have as your 6 wide receivers. Let me know in the comment section down below. Really appreciate you guys coming through. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform 4 years Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. Of course, this episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.